If you're in the market for a high-quality TKL keyboard with QMK firmware and wireless connectivity, we've got two premium options here to put head-to-head, the NuPhy Gem80 and the Keychron Q3 Max. Let's dig in and see which one comes out on top. Before we dive in, I want to mention that I purchased both of these keyboards myself, and this video is not sponsored. Now, NuPhy did send me a Gem80 to review, which I did separately, but I bought this one myself because I wanted this color to keep for myself. I do have some affiliate links in the description for you if you're interested in picking up either of these keyboards and you'd like to support this channel. Okay, so since this is a comparison, we won't be doing the usual rundown of features and specs because we'll be talking about most of the features as we actually compare these two keyboards. I will, of course, still give you a sound test of both of them. The first sound test will be their default configuration with no modifications and all the foam that they come with. You'll actually see the purple Gem80 make an appearance there in its default configuration. The second sound test is going to be with some modifications made to each one to get them more to my personal taste, and the modifications or changes I made will be listed on the screen. All right, so let's get into this comparison, and we'll start with the construction and the physical specs. The Gem80 has an aluminum top and a polycarbonate bottom, while the Q3 Max is all aluminum and quite a bit heavier. Now, while an all-metal build can make a keyboard look and feel more premium, it's not always all positives. For example, the Q3 Max without any modifications is a bit more prone to metallic resonance. It's not super loud, so it's probably hard to hear unless you're using headphones, but the Gem80 has none of that metallic resonance that an all-metal case can be prone to. So while at face value, it may seem like the polycarbonate case here would give it a less premium feel, it actually contributes to a very pleasant sound profile with no modifications. Now, you can reduce this in the Q3 Max by adding some modifications like force breaks, maybe a tape mod, and lubing any of the switches that might be contributing to a pingy sound. That will help. Continuing on the physical aspects, the Gem80 is just ever so slightly shorter here, less wide than the Q3 Max. The Gem80 gets the win in terms of case color options because there are 5 color options that have optional matching keycaps, whereas the Q3 Max is currently available in only 2 color options, and that is shell white, like you see here, and carbon black. All right, now let's start digging into the key differences between these when it comes to features, experience, specs, all that. So first, let's talk about some features that are better with the Gem80. First, let's talk about the obvious one, and that is the customization options that are available with the Gem80. And what I'm talking about are manufacturer-provided customization options. Because the Q3 is also certainly customizable via modifications, but the Gem80 takes personalization to a new level by including 4 different mounting options in the base price. They just come in the box. There are 3 different types of silicone gasket mounts for different amounts of flex, as well as a top mount option for a firmer feel. NuPhy also offers 3 additional plate materials. The Gem80, as I mentioned, comes with an FR4 plate, which is sort of a middle ground between firm and flexible. But for an additional charge, you can get a polycarbonate plate, which I did and currently have installed in this one. And you also have the option of a palm plate and aluminum. So when it comes to manufacturer-provided customization options, the Gem80 offers more than the Q3 Max. All right, getting back to the sound, I have to give the edge here to the Gem80 in terms of getting a great sound profile with no modifications. So just right out of the box, it, in my opinion, has a more satisfying sound for potentially more people. The Q3 Max does not have a bad stock sound profile, but I do hear a bit of that metallic resonance. That's something I've honestly heard with every Q line keyboard I've ever had, whether it was the original Q, the Q Pro, or the Q Max. So regardless of whether you prefer a thocky or a clacky type sound profile, that metallic ping, it's not really an ideal sound no matter what your preferences are, and it requires a little bit of modifying to eliminate with either force break or tape mod or lubing switches. All of those things may be necessary to eliminate any of that metallic sound. Whereas with the Gem80, you don't have to do anything to it, it just sounds good out of the box. Also in favor of the Gem80, in my opinion, the keycaps are just better. There's subjectivity here when it comes to the look and certainly the profile of, what height you prefer, but I think the quality of the keycaps is a bit better with the Gem80. Now, I personally also find the profile of the keycaps that are available to add on here more comfortable to type on because these are very tall. The keycaps that come on the Q Max line are very tall, and so if you don't like really tall keycaps, if you don't like your fingers resting kind of high up in the air, then these won't be your favorite. There's nothing wrong with them, and they're not bad quality by any means, but I have to give the edge here to the keycaps that come with the NuPhy if you add them on. When it comes to battery life, we have a split decision here because with the lights turned off, without any backlighting on between these two, the Gem80 gets the win for better battery life. We have 330 hours maximum battery life here with the Gem80, only 180 hours here with the Q3 Max. So it's not disappointing battery life with the Q3 Max necessarily, but definitely not as good as getting over 300 hours with the Gem80. We'll revisit this when we talk about battery life with the lights turned on. Now here's another thing that has some subjectivity to it, but in my opinion, in my assessment here, the switches, which are optional, are better quality with the Gem80 as far as the offerings, what they come with. You have Keychron Jupiter switches to choose from here with the Q3 Max. You have red linears, brown tactiles, or banana tactile, which are just a snappier tactile switch, not clicky like a blue switch. And the Gem80 offers 3 NuPhy Keychron collaboration switches, the mint, raspberry, and lemon. The lemon are tactile, the mint and the raspberry are both linear, different weights to them or different force. There's also an option for a cherry silent switch that you can get in the Gem80, which is a little more expensive, but the quality of the switches themselves, they're just a little bit better quality, I think, and that comes down to a few factors, but the quality of the materials just feels better on those NuPhy Keychron collab switches compared to the Keychron Jupiter switches, and also, in my experience, a little more objective. I found that the Keychron Jupiter switches do have some spring ping. It's not consistent, it's not like terrible. They also don't have as consistent as a lube job as the NuPhy Keychron collaboration switches. I just have not had any of these switches, and I've tried both the mint and the raspberry in a full set, and I've had a couple of individual samples of the lemon. I've not had any that sound pingy, no spring ping. None of them feel scratchy. The lube job feels more consistent, so I have to give the nod to these being the better switches compared to the Keychron Jupiters. And the last thing in favor of the Gem80 is that if you are not interested in the manufacturer switches and keycaps and you want to buy just bare bones, they both have the option, but it is more fairly priced with the Gem80. If you don't want keycaps or switches from NuPhy, then the Gem80 bare bones is going to cost you $169 for the wireless version. There's also a wired only version, which costs a little bit less. Whereas the bare bones version of the Q3 Max costs $194. So Keychron's not giving you much of a discount there. So NuPhy's giving you a little bit more of a fair price for not including the keycaps and switches. All right, so now let's talk about a few things that favor the Q3 Max. First up, if what you're looking for is a very flexible or a bouncy typing feel, then you're gonna get more of that with the Q3 Max if you remove the case bottom foam. They both have a layer of foam underneath the PCB that you can remove, which will free up some space, some literal room for the PCB assembly to travel, to move up and down. The squishy foam gasket mounts in the Q3 Max just give you a little bit more of that bounce while you're typing compared to the silicone gasket mounts, any of the mount styles really. that come in the Gem80. Now, the Gem80 still has what I would classify as a flexible typing feel. It is not, super firm or anything with the gasket mounts, especially if you take out that case foam. So if that's what you're looking for, you'll get a little bit more of it in the Q3 Max. Now, coming back to battery life, once you turn the backlighting on, you have a different situation than with the backlighting off, because the Gem80 here goes down to 35 to 50 hours with the backlighting on, depending on the brightness level. So lowest brightness level, you're getting around 50 hours. The Q3 Max, however, with the backlighting on the lowest setting is gonna get you up to 100 hours. So double the battery life here with your backlighting on the lowest setting. So if you plan on using the backlighting all the time in wireless mode, you'll get a little more battery life out of the Q3 Max. Also for the Q3 Max, you have an encoder knob, something that is just not present on the Gem80. You've got an F13 key on the Gem80 here, and in place of that on the Q3 Max, you have an encoder knob. So if that's what you prefer, you get that with the Q3 Max. Another pro here for the Q3 Max is the stabilizers. Now, I don't have a problem with the sound of the stabilizers on the Gem80. In general, I am happy with them. However, there is no support for PCB mount stabilizers on the Gem80. It comes with plate mount stabilizers, and the PCB does not have any mounting points for PCB mount stabilizers. The Q3 Max comes with PCB mounted screw-in stabilizers. So of course, if you want to upgrade them, get your own, you certainly can do that. If you care about that, then that is a pro in favor of the Q3 Max. And it is something that I personally prefer. I wish there was at least support for screw-in stabilizers on the Gem80. But again, I'm not disappointed in the performance of the stabilizers here, and you can still sort of upgrade them. You can still buy your own plate mount stabilizers. It's just a shame not to have support for PCB mount. Now I have two sort of potential pros for the Q3 Max as well. One is generally a little bit more of a classic design. I should have actually mentioned this going both directions, or kind of a neutral thing, because when it comes to the design, I think you get a little bit more of an interesting design, something more unique with the Gem80, because you got 5 color options. The styling is a little more unique, a little bit more classic with the Q3 Max. So if you prefer more of a classic look, then the Q3 Max is gonna fit better with that, I think. If you prefer more of a unique, modern, different style design, then the Gem80 would appeal more to you. So they both could have a pro or a con, depending on what you prefer. But a more likely potential pro for the Q3 Max here is, it's not true yet, but Keychron has offered many of its keyboards in an ISO layout in the past. I don't believe one is currently available for the Q3 Max because I didn't see it on their website, but there is at least the potential for this to be available in an ISO layout at some point because of Keychron's history of doing that. Whereas NuPhy has never offered any of their keyboards in an ISO layout, at least not yet. So if the ISO layout is what you use, then you have a higher likelihood of getting what you want here from the Q3 Max. All right, lastly, let's just briefly mention some features and specs that are the same between them. Both of them have QMK firmware with VIA for customization, so the experience of customizing them is the same. When it comes to wireless, they both have 2.4 gigahertz wireless with 1000 hertz polling. They also have 1000 hertz polling over the wired connection, and they both have 3 Bluetooth connections. When it comes to construction quality, the Q3, of course, as I mentioned, is all metal, but the Gem80 and the Q3 Max both feel very premium to me, so I kind of call it a tie when it comes to construction quality. Now, when it comes to price, I'm basically just calling this equal or a tie. There is a slight difference, but once you add the keycaps and switches to the Gem80, you are looking at a price of $199 for the wireless version, and the Q3 Max costs $214 for the pre-built version. So they're both $200 keyboards. However, as I mentioned, if you are looking to buy the bare bones version and provide your own keycaps and switches, the pricing is more fair on the Gem80. So at the end of the day, who is the winner here? Well, this one is going to come down mostly to personal preference because these are both premium TKL keyboards that are enjoyable to use and offer solid wireless and QMK customization. If I had to pick one here, the Gem80 fits with my preferences better than the Q3 Max, but that doesn't make the Q3 Max a bad choice at all. Especially if you're willing to do a little bit of modification to the Q3 Max, you can get a very nice sound profile and a nice flexible typing feel out of it. Now, if the $200 price point sounds like a bit much for either of these, there are some great TKL options at lower price points if you're willing to sacrifice maybe a thing or two. For all of the same features in a plastic build instead of a metal build, there is the Keychron V3 Max, which is half the price, but still QMK, still gasket mount, still PCB mounted stabilizers. It's a great value. Now, if you want a metal build quality and you don't want to sacrifice on that, you also want a flexible typing feel, and you're willing to give up QMK for a manufacturer-specific customization software, check out the Galaxy 80 from EpoMaker that I recently reviewed. It is a great option at a very fair price. All right, so that'll do it for my comparison of the NuPhy Gem80 and the Keychron Q3 Max. Which one would you pick, or which one did you pick if you picked one? Let me know how you're liking your choice down in the comments, and let me know if you have any questions about either of these. Don't forget to subscribe to the Semi-Pro Tech and Gear channel, and while you're here, why don't you check out one of these videos? I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.